I know this will all sound crazy, but I can assure you that what I'm about to share is not some grief-fueled delusion. My cousin Sam died mysteriously in his home, and after no one heard from him for 3 days, the call was made, and the police conducted a welfare check. They said the door was unlocked, so they walked right in and found him lifeless in his bed. It was concluded that he suffered cardiac arrest due to a night of excessive drinking and overdosed on painkillers bought off the street. Liquor bottles lay discarded, and opiates laced with fentanyl were strewn on his nightstand. This isn't my cousin. He never once went too far. Ever since we were kids, I was always the troublemaker. He had no prior health conditions. He lived an active lifestyle. He ate well. He was happy. He did not have a drug or drinking problem either. A little beer here and there and on weekends, but nothing concerning. Period. Stranger still, it was a closed casket funeral. When I asked my aunt and uncle about the autopsy or why it was a closed casket, they gave me vague answers such as, "It was him all right," and one that stuck out, "We don't want to see our boy's face in that casket." I could understand that, I guess. I just couldn't help but wonder if there was a specific reason they weren't telling me any more details. I wondered if his body was even in there at all. In my head, a closed casket and someone passing from an overdose didn't seem to add up when the two were put together. Were they really that ashamed? Didn't they want to see his face one last time in a way that has been historically carried out by families all over the world for centuries? This immediately sounded alarms in my head. It was as if his death was somehow being swept under the rug. Even my parents admitted that they felt it was a bit odd for them to do, but that we should respect their grieving. We don't have any children of our own either, and he was an only child, so I would immediately assume my aunt and uncle would be taking this more seriously. 2 days after his funeral, I wanted to visit his home and see if there was some indication of devious or questionable action surrounding his passing. I was fairly certain that the property had authorities' eyes on it, but not with any units surveying the area all night. There just had to be other things that I could potentially find in the home. The property was still going through probate, and my family wasn't sure what to do with everything, so I had a chance to act on this. That is, if anything wasn't already taken by the family or as evidence by police. I needed to find things like calendars, times, locations, perhaps a journal with names of people I didn't personally know or knew all that well. Maybe he was on drugs, and we didn't know any better. Things like that. I had a spare key to his back door that not even his parents were aware of. Thinking back, it may have been a good idea to inform someone about that, but at the time I was glad I didn't. There was just too much going on in my head. Sam and I were very close after all. We would spend weekends talking about life, shooting the shit, and sometimes popping beers back, eventually with me crashing on the couch after a bonfire with guests. We talked about everything. He was more of a brother than a cousin. My best friend. As I said, the death was too sudden and strange. He wasn't depressed from what I could gather, and if he was doing a damn good job at keeping it together. It's just that he really didn't seem to have any reason to be so down in the dumps to that degree. So I wondered, what if he had gotten himself into some kind of trouble? Maybe he was murdered. I've watched enough of The Shield and X-Files to believe that some cover-up conspiracy may have been going on. The notions kept playing in my head like some morbid and catchy melody. I made my way into his home on a Thursday night from the back door. The place looked the same as it did when I was over a week prior to no one hearing from him. I looked at the fridge where he had pictures of family and friends slid into magnet frames. I was in a lot of them. It was really hard to look at. There were scribblings on pieces of paper hanging by fridge magnets as well. I noticed a picture that stuck out. It was a picture of him and a couple that I remember would go urban exploring. Stacy and Travis. I met them a few times, but it was always when I was drinking. They're a couple that he's known for a few years, though. Maybe one of them had some information. I didn't know either of their numbers since I wasn't as close with them as he was. That's when I remembered Sam telling me he was actually going to go urban exploring with them just a week prior to his death. Or at least, when the body was found. I did find it a bit odd that Sam actually agreed to something like this. He was the type to stay out of harm's way, and the idea of him entering private property was outlandish. But at the time, I just figured he only wanted to dip his toes in some treacherous waters for once in his life. Thinking back to when he first brought it up and when I told him to be careful, that's just about how he put it to me.
You know me, Jake, always on the straight and narrow. I want to do this, man. I'll be fine. I'll have 2 good buddies to watch my back,
was what he said to me over the phone. I just didn't think it would be the last time I'd ever hear him speak again. One of them had to have some information. I didn't know either of their numbers since I wasn't as close with them as he was. I searched the rest of the house for a journal or something. His cell phone was taken by police, so a journal was the next best thing. We live in an era where everything is digitized, but I know Sam to be fairly old school and would catch him writing in a journal. I've just never had the opportunity to read any entries or even really hear what he wrote about. Family or not, some things can be a bit too personal to share. But this situation overrides all that. It didn't take long for me to find a few journals inside of his computer desk drawer, and I found enough information to give me exactly what I needed. Only what I read really caught me off guard. I guess I didn't know my cousin as well as I thought I did, because not only did I find phone numbers of everyone he was close with, but I found addresses and even spots he crossed off a list for urban exploration. What stuck out was there were dates marked next to the locations. I had an internal struggle then. My cousin, actually being the adventurous type? I tried to shake the idea from my mind that I was overreacting, but it would seem that he had been lying about what he does with his time to me and possibly the whole family. I was under the impression that he'd never do any urbex or keep anything detailed like this in a million years. After mulling this all over and reading more of the journal, I learned that the last spot he went to was the Morrison farmhouse. An urban legend surrounds that farmhouse with a pretty terrible history. A married couple had the estate passed down to them through generations. The family supplied markets in our town and even the food industry in other states for over a century, right up until the previous couple died and passed the property to their 19-year-old unmarried daughter, Sally, in 2015. The thing about Sally is that her parents were under the impression that she would marry and keep the farm up and running. They couldn't have been more wrong. Sally had no interest in carrying out the Morrison legacy, and had apparently sold off some of the animals and farming equipment. But other people got suspicious that Sally was actively killing the animals. Crops withered as well. The scent of death and rot became a miasma that covered the area like a blanket. Sally was, for a lack of a better term, disconnected. The story goes that she was into the occult and used some of the animals as sacrifices or whatever dark art she was practicing. This is all rumor, of course. I thought it was ridiculous. But, in a way, I was drawing connections as to how this may or may not have something to do with all of this. Obviously, the authorities conducted several welfare checks, only to find the windows boarded up, and any area where animals would be housed previously displayed either no life or a blood stain where they once were. It gave the police the creeps more than anything like worry. and most would report hearing strange sounds from within the house, or even as far as saying an apparition would appear before they could even gain entry. Whether it was from paranoia or some superstitious fear, nobody really knew what to believe those officers said. But it made townsfolk during that time not trust any word the reports would include. Then, after so many years of no crime being reported or really anything illegal occurring, the people just kind of let the girl be and figured this was Sally's weird way of dealing with grief, because the inheritance taxes were still being reported, and someone was paying the bills. Anything I could dig up about this gave me surface information, nothing about actual accounts mentioned. I could only guess it's Sally, but it was almost as if a ghost was paying the fees. The entire property was lifeless, save for Sally apparently remaining inside the property. People all over would never see her come out of that house. After about a decade, the place was eventually vandalized, and then the windows got boarded up even more. From then on, it became somewhat of a landmark, and another rumor sprung up that Sally had died there, in turn haunting the property. Certain realtors even claimed the property as some kind of off-record haunted tourist attraction to raise the value of the area surrounding the Morrison estate. This kind of thing was exactly what Travis and Stacy were into. I would hear all about the places they would go when I would stay at Sam's on those beer by the bonfire nights. They would frequently bring up the paranormal, like little campfire stories at parties, and almost every one would have some variation of a ghost or spirit included, even with a strange town conspiracy that involved whatever location they explored. I always thought it was bullshit to make the subject more alluring, so I would usually tune out, but now I'm a little more skeptical on the matter. Just a little. No matter what went on, I was certain something bad must have happened at the Morrison farmhouse when they all went there. Do I think a ghost killed him? Not particularly, but those two were with him, and no one seemed to make this connection. Not even the police. This was enough for me. Now I knew I was right. Maybe I should have pried on the matter more, because he didn't give me too much to go on. I was also pulling up to work, about to endure a 16-hour shift that day while I was on the phone with him, trying to lock in. He randomly called me to let me know what he was doing, and it was such a quick conversation. Maybe he felt guilty, but I didn't even ask to have him pin me a location. I just trusted him when he said it was all good, and I figured they were just going to some crumbling building where he might scrape his knee or something. Not a supposed haunted house that the whole town and neighboring cities feared. And that makes me wonder. I had enough information to do what I needed and decided on calling both Travis and Stacy tomorrow. Putting the journals back and my phone in my pocket, I headed for the door, then stopped before I locked the place back up. I thought for a second about what I was doing. Was Sam really lying about something that could have expedited his death? I felt as if I was lingering there for too long, but a huge part of me was screaming to take those journals home. I just couldn't believe that Sam had hidden this part of him. Because now it seems like it got him into some deep shit. A wave of panic washed over me, and I shuddered at the scenarios my mind conjured up. A car's headlights shone through the nearest window, and the paranoia set in, so I quickly got out of there, pretending I was leaving my own home. Once I made it inside my car and I started it, I noticed something in the reflection of my rearview mirror. Off some distance away and on the same street was a single parked car. Ford Taurus, recent model, I'm sure of it. Sitting on the edge where pavement and someone's front yard meet, facing me. It was parked just before you would turn onto the main road, and the lights were off. A stark contrast to the vehicles parked in their respective driveways. Even in the dark of night, I could clearly see two people were inside, and the shape of their heads were unmistakable. Faces shrouded in blackened mystery. I brushed it off for the first 5 or so minutes of my drive, but I couldn't shake the feeling of eyes on me. With everything else on my mind and how it was making me feel, this just added to the list of hypotheticals that began to grow. A pair of individuals that could potentially have a hand in my cousin's death slowly creeping in my mind. Behind me like a predator stalking more prey. I didn't notice any cars following me when I made it closer to my neighborhood, but the implications caused a paranoia I have never experienced before. I couldn't close my eyes until I made sure all of my doors and windows were locked, and took doxylamine to fall asleep. For the next 2 days, I decided to stay indoors and go to work only. I'm a zone manager for a janitorial maintenance company, and my boss already asked if I needed some time off after I told him about Sam's passing. I wanted to remain at work to keep my mind preoccupied, but I said I'd let him know. I decided on reaching out to Sam's 2 friends soon after I tidied up around the house and did some laundry. I would catch myself peeking through windows to see if that car, or anyone suspicious, was watching my house. There was never anyone there, though. I tried calling my parents first to ask if they had seen anyone they didn't know skulking around or if strangers reached out to them, but they never picked up. I don't keep in contact with them too often, but it was odd that they didn't so much as say a simple hello back or even check on me. Maybe I'm being ridiculous. Psyched out by the implication of a conspiracy and going mad. I thought about just driving over there to check on them, but paranoia grew into a weight, eventually holding me in place. If the cops were already somehow covering this up and I had people follow me home from my cousin's place, then how deep does this go? No, I'm not crazy. I just can't deny this anymore. This was all wrong. I decided to finally reach out to my cousin's friends. I started by calling Stacy. From what I remember, Stacy was into Japanese culture and had 2 cats. Her personality was welcoming enough, and she would yap incessantly about her urbex escapades. I figured calling her first would be a better idea because maybe she would want to strike up a conversation to provide more answers than Travis right off the bat. Unfortunately, she didn't answer. This obviously made me a bit worried, but I shivered the thought away, then dialed Travis's number. Travis was a car enthusiast, and I remember him clearly speaking about owning a 2-car garage where he and his buddies from all over America would tinker around with classic cars. He seemed a bit on the abrasive side, though, seemingly eccentric, but overall a fairly likable guy. I do have a memory of him and I kicking some ass at beer pong over at my cousin's, and we bonded over enjoying the overall style of a '68 Dodge Charger.
Hello,
he answered, sounding a bit bothered. Hey there, is this Travis? I'm Sam's cousin, Jake. You got some time for a conversation about Sam? I left some space around the words about and Sam's name to see if he would pick up on my conspiratorial tone. There was silence for a few seconds, then I heard him sigh deeply.
Yeah,
he finally said.
But not over the phone. I need you to meet me somewhere.
I told him I'm willing to travel wherever, and there was another bout of silence.
There might not be a lot of time, but go to Gabe's on 3rd and Leafdale. You'll see my car. It'll be the only classic in the lot. 30 minutes. Don't be late or I will leave.
He hung up. Gabe's was a bar, and it was a good 20-minute drive, so I left immediately. I was in such a rush that I didn't think to look for any vehicles that may have been following me. I needed to be better about that, but I didn't notice that car again or anything out of the ordinary as I pulled into the parking lot. Sure enough, Travis's car was there. His '67 matte black Pontiac GTO. It was in such good condition you'd think it was just manufactured. I walked in to see a decent crowd of people enjoying drinks and bar activities. Wasn't really my scene, but I would do just about anything if it meant uncovering more of my cousin's mysterious death. Thinking back to some photos I have seen Travis and Stacy in, I looked for a man with long brown hair and a mullet and sideburns. I think I remember him sporting a dangly earring of a knife or something like that. Basically, I'm looking for a vampire from Lost Boys. I went to the bar and ordered a shot of bourbon and looked around. In the far corner by a pool table, I spotted him. He was sitting in a small booth and nursing some bottles of beer. It was the earring that stuck out. After downing my shot, I walked over. "Travis?" I asked once I was in earshot. He faced me and motioned for me to sit down. "Haven't seen you in a while. What, a couple months?" he said. "Yeah, something like that," I replied, even though I just saw him and Stacy a couple weeks ago. As I've stated before, I think we've seen each other maybe 2 or 3 times in our lives total, so I knew next to nothing about him other than knowing he was into urban exploring and cars. For all I know, this guy could have killed my cousin. I think everyone goes through this when you meet someone one-on-one for the first time. A flood of intrusive thoughts pour into your mind like a waterfall crashing into your soul. Anxiety bubbled up in my chest. Forcing these thoughts away, I spoke again. "So I think there's something weird going on about Sam's death." "Yeah," he replied. "This is why I wanted to meet here. Crowded, away from suspicion." "Where's Stacy?" I asked. "Stacy's fucking dead, man," he shuddered out an intense whisper, and my jaw dropped. "A lot of fucked up shit went down. The 3 of us, He put his hands to his hairline and pulled back. Veins bulged around his temples, and he sat forward suddenly, letting his hair fall over his face. He was obviously distressed. "Look, what I'm about to tell you isn't going to make any fucking sense." He got a little loud, but quickly piped down, slumping forward. His hands returned to his face. I could tell he was on the brink of a full-blown panic attack. I motioned for him to speak. "I did everything I could. I'm sorry." Whimpers and quick breaths came from the man in an instant. A tough exterior now crumbled with the memory of something that must have traumatized him. "What happened?" I asked. He quickly straightened up and wiped his face. His hazel eyes darted around the bar and then focused on me with intensity. "We should have never gone to that fucking farmhouse," he said. "I haven't gotten any sleep ever since. I keep having terrible fucking nightmares. Fucking bugs and death. Stacy and Sam are there too, but they're all wrong." He stopped to drink his beer deeply. "Sorry. Anyway, Stacy always got me riled up, man. To be honest, I only tagged along with any crazy idea of hers because she's the finest piece of ass I've ever been with. I just wanted to impress her. I always knew I would lose her eventually, but I never imagined I'd lose her like this." He took a long drink from his Budweiser and grimaced. "About a month ago, we watched some fucking YouTube video about paranormal investigator groups talking about the Morrison farmhouse. Stacy loves that shit. She always listened to horror stories and watched those trail cam footage videos. Anyway, she wanted to go so bad because the crew picked up some pretty convincing shit. Whispers, crying, you know. They thought some girl was stuck in a room asking for help, though. But why, you know? The place has been abandoned for almost 10 years or some shit. Who the fuck would even be in there, and why some girl?" He visibly shuddered as he said that. "I don't think I've seen this one. Is it a smaller channel?" I asked. I would watch some content like that from time to time, so I was curious if he would pull the video up and we could watch it. I also may have been subscribed to the channel by chance. "Yeah, but listen, after what happened, the video was taken down," he explained. "I went to go watch it again, but it's fucking gone now." "Christ, what's in that place?" I asked, shocked by what he just told me. "What did you see?" He stared at me with an expression of a man whose life just flashed before his eyes. "The fucking devil," he said. "I don't know. Something evil, a fucking killer, man. Not from this world. Whatever that Morrison girl was doing in there was fucked up. Pure evil. While what he said made the hairs on the back of my neck stand at attention, I was struggling to believe that something supernatural had happened. Sure, all of that talk with Sally and her family's misfortune sets a great tone for the topic, but I just couldn't grasp how it was even possible. All I knew is these three did something they really shouldn't have done, and now this guy is making me wonder whether or not he wants to provide cover for something. What do you mean, man? What the fuck happened to my cousin? I'm the only one that made it out. It was distracted. He started doing that rapid breathing, but quickly stopped himself. I barricaded it back in there. I put so much shit in the way of that fucking door. I was fucking frantic, but He paused, catching his breath and taking another drink. It? I asked. I watched them die. Oh my fucking god, man, I'm sorry. I was so fucking scared. I slammed my fist on the table, and other patrons looked over. There was just no way this could be covered up by a demon or whatever the hell he was talking about. My cousin is dead. I'm not buying this crock of shit. You got about 30 seconds before I call the police and smash your fucking head in. I was ready to accuse him of murdering the both of them because of what he just told me. I was absolutely infuriated right now. To such a degree that I didn't notice him doing his best to stop himself from turning into a heap of tears. He was looking like something comparable to an old car motor suspended by chains and trying to desperately turn over. He was on the verge of hyperventilating. He looked like a little boy who had gotten in trouble for the first time in his life. Eyes glassy and reflecting the light above us. Tears finally made their way down his cheeks. A waitress and the manager came to our table and asked if everything was okay, but we both reassured them that we were fine. Just going over some family shit. I stopped and thought about the words he had just spoken to me. It had painted such a vivid picture to at least consider it. I thought about it more. He had lost someone too. I calmed down. He also seemed to relax as well. Travis took a deep breath and looked out of the window nearest to him. I was going to ask her to marry me, he said flatly. Now she's gone. Forever. Alright, I'm sorry. Please continue. He looked at me with pleading eyes, the corner of his lips curling inward. And I'm sorry about Sam. I really wish I wasn't such a fucking coward. Maybe I could have saved at least one of them. I don't know. I'm always tucking my tail at every stressful thing in my life. He said with a half-hearted chuckle and met my eyes. Look, you have to believe me, please. I don't have any reason to lie to you. I don't have anything to gain from that. He continued with the rest of what happened. Travis said that Stacy called Sam to ask if he was willing to explore a new place with them, which he agreed to. It was just a random idea the two had with very little planning. They recently got Sam to come out with them a few months back, and he started enjoying going places with them. He also explained he would only go if Stacy asked him, which made me raise an eyebrow. Stacy claimed that this time, she wanted another person there with them in case anything went south. They made their way to the wraparound porch to the front door and got in through a poorly boarded up window. It was surprising to hear there were no people around or law enforcement patrolling the area. What's more is that he said some of the lights were on. Obviously, they ignored private property signs, but that video he spoke of included the channel host claiming it to be a low-key haunted tourist attraction. Like all the fear-inducing elements the property portrayed were merely for show or treated as props on a movie set to them. But my cousin and them actually found something that was more terrifying than they'd anticipated. A back room had a cellar door blocked off with hundreds of pounds of furniture and other objects bearing it. That's when we heard the girl, distant, weak, and crying for help, just behind the barricade. I asked them if we could get the fuck out of there, but they were convinced on helping this girl now. Both Stacy and my cousin started tearing the wall of dressers, chairs, and tables down to get to the trapped girl. I couldn't move, man. I didn't want to admit that I was actively shitting my pants, but whatever. The barricade was removed. They shined their flashlights down a set of stairs with a door nearly off its hinges wide open and a single broken bulb placed above the small opening. The voice wasn't responding to their beckoning anymore. Stacy asked to have my cousin, who was equally eager to go down there, lead the way. Sam went ahead and started making his way down the stairs. There was a hole in the cellar. I thought it got dug up by that Morrison girl after her parents died, he said, sounding a bit confused. When that blockade was completely uncovered, the smell hit us. I wanted to call the police right then and there, but the two wanted to confirm a body first before making any calls. Hindsight is such a bitch, because my thumb was hovering over the call button. God, my fucking adrenaline was going haywire and I couldn't think straight. He explained they made it down there and found exactly what they intended. Strange symbols in white chalk around the hole, candles with melted wax and piles and animal carcasses all over. There was something else. Some shelves with shit and jars in one corner would look like a fucking butcher shop. There was also... oh God. He visibly shuddered. This is when everyone collectively agreed that it was time to go, and that there was a good reason why a barricade was ever put up to begin with. Who the hell even put it up anyway? And that's when it crawled out of that hole. I think it sleeps in there or something. He took another drink and looked to his left at a flat screen with college football on. I was recording, he said, quickly. I had a GoPro recording from my head strap. He produced something from his vest pocket and slid it over to me on the table. It was a micro SD card. I think it's best if you just watch it for yourself, he said. Maybe it's better with you anyway. Keep it, throw it out, I don't care. I don't fucking know. I put all of the recordings from that day on one video file, though. Travis stopped to stare into his beer for a moment. I was gonna make a throwaway YouTube channel and post it. Put some random name and email in. But I decided that's not a good idea. I'm too fucking scared to go to the police, too. I hear way too many wild conspiracies about what happens to people who find things they shouldn't go looking for. We were also technically breaking and entering. I don't know, but now that I've been through this shit, anything could fucking happen. He looked up from his beer and met my eyes. I know how psychotic this sounds, dude. But whatever that thing is, it needs to stay in that fucking farmhouse. Or that place needs to burn to the ground. After he slammed the remainder of his beer, we politely agreed there was nothing more for us to talk about. We left it at that. And we said our goodbyes with him staying at the bar, as he said he was meeting some friends there later. Part of me would have been alright with the idea of keeping in contact with him, but I think we both wouldn't mind if we never spoke again. I downed another shot from the bar, then left and sat in my car for a good 30 minutes, thinking about everything that had just occurred over the duration of this mystery. My deep dive into the passing of my cousin has my headspace pondering subjects of unknown proportions. This was the very first time in my life where I felt a legitimate reason to be afraid. Not some falsity created from a nightmare, or recollecting imagery in the form of something terrible. Turning the car over, a radio station that played older rock songs was playing The Clash's Should I Stay or Should I Go? And I immediately turned the power off, deciding on driving home in silence. I stopped at a liquor store to pick up a pint of some booze. I didn't want to be alone, but what I'm now involved with seems like it would cause more problems for anyone else. Besides, I needed to watch what was on that SD card. I drove back home in a daze, then pulled up to my house. It was a good sign that the Ford sedan wasn't around, so I quickly made it inside. Glad that there was still some sunlight left, but anxiety coursed through my veins as I thought about what I might see on that video. Locking every door and window, I thought about the possibility that the SD card may have a virus or something. Maybe Travis was making bullshit up, or that he was somehow getting authorities involved with me now. The drinks gave me enough liquid courage to slip the thing into my laptop, though. As soon as the media player loaded, I pushed play. I'm going to save you the agony of me transcribing every little detail from start to finish as best as I can and get to the point. The only thing I wanted to see was what happened to my cousin and Stacy. I assumed the first few minutes would just be them not doing much of anything, probably getting to the farmhouse. The video was 11 minutes, and I fast-forwarded to about 6.5 minutes, deducing from the preview footage that they were inside the derelict farmhouse. Eventually, the three got to that room with all of the dressers and shit covering the cellar door. Sam was standing next to Stacy, looking confused as they beheld the oddity in front of them. It was emotional and terrifying to see my dead cousin on this video, doing something he enjoyed. But then becoming concerned with a girl's sudden voice coming from the other side of that barricade.
"Oh, please. Whoever is out there, please help me. Some trespassers trapped me down here."
Every hair on my body stood on end upon hearing that play from my laptop speakers. They all stood transfixed. It was Stacy who had taken charge and began moving items as Travis's protests were ignored. I could tell Sam was a bit reluctant to join in, but he was always the type to help someone in need. The pair got the work done, eventually making their way downstairs to be met by a dreadfully gruesome scene. A rather large hole really was dug up down there. Somehow through concrete, a seemingly disheveled and young woman, not even 30, dug some kind of massive hole in the middle of the cellar. When Travis focused his attention to the right, something straight out of Texas Chainsaw Massacre came into view. I made out this haphazard meat processing chemistry lab mashup packed in the corner of the cellar. A bookshelf with what looked like old tomes and textbooks lined the wall behind the space. Mounds of rotten flesh, human or animal, I couldn't really tell, were laid out and smeared all over the walls and surfaces. Flies and huge insects buzzed around the area. As Stacy called out for the girl, Travis was only a few feet away from her, but walked towards that area and focused on some strange glass jars filled with dirty liquid. Interconnected tubes with chemical barrels were placed by a work desk that had clipboards and textbooks on it. I saw intricate diagrams of human, pig, and cow anatomy taped to the wall next to a gurney with straps and dark stains splashed all over it.
"What the fuck?"
A terrified Travis muttered under his breath. Then Stacy screamed. Travis immediately focused his attention on her, and Sam was blocking the view slightly. Sam frantically stepped back, obviously frightened, and tripped on something that caused him to fall backward. The thud was loud enough to cause me to turn the audio down out of fright. Travis looked down at Sam, and he wasn't moving. He must have hit his head from the impact. I could hear choking sounds then. Travis looked up to where Stacy was, and she wasn't alone. The GoPro camera quality was a lot better than I anticipated, so the image was crystal clear. A girl was standing next to her and facing Stacy. In my mind, I knew it was the Morrison girl, Sally. I've seen her pictures on the internet and newspapers. She wasn't wearing any clothes. It was disturbing to look at. If the nude image of Sally, a girl who was previously labeled as a ghost by an entire town in her house basement, wasn't concerning enough, her right hand and entire forearm were down Stacy's throat. She was reaching around for something with Stacy spasming while she dug into her. Travis's frantic breathing was silenced by a sickening wet crack. He stood there, obviously frozen from fear. Stacy's body slumped, and Sally's arm was the only thing holding her up. She pulled her arm away with terrible speed, and Stacy instantly fell in a lifeless heap. There was something in Sally's hand. I know what a human heart looks like. The display of violence left an aftermath of gore and crimson in the space. Some cracked bones from Stacy's ribcage were in the Morrison girl's palm under the heart. Sally, and with this dull expression, took a greedy bite out of the removed organ like it was something she did every day. Trails of viscera trickled down Sally's mouth as the organ was consumed. As she took a second bite, her eyes met the camera. The way her eyes glinted in the darkness sent a chill through my entire body. It was as if her energy was transferred through the screen, because I swear I could genuinely feel her perceiving me. I was instantly terrified. I almost slammed my laptop shut, but I kept watching. Travis ran. He took off screaming. He left Sam in there, but I really couldn't blame the guy. Even though it sent a pang of anger and resentment through me, I understood. What he had just witnessed was horrific. The last thing the video showed before its abrupt end was Travis desperately putting everything he could back over that cellar opening. The media player window was now all black, with the play button in the middle. My face nearly inches from the screen. What I saw on the screen reflection behind me, next to one of my lamps, caused my body to go into fight or flight. When I fell out of my computer chair and looked over to the lamp, nothing was there. It was as if I had some hallucination through the screen, but I definitely saw a figure. It was Sally. And exactly the way she looked in that video, with smeared gore all over her naked body. I got the fuck out of there. Now I'm in a motel room with my laptop and posting this here. I don't know what I'm supposed to do, but I do know one thing. Travis was right. Whatever that thing is, it needs to stay down there. It needs to stay in that farmhouse, down in that cellar. I know, now more than ever, that my cousin had gotten himself into something crazy and outlandish enough for police and officials to cover the entire thing up as something normal. I can't help but wonder, though. How do police know what's really going on? How was Sally able to enact such monstrous violence? And if there was a hole dug up down there, then how come I didn't see any digging equipment in that video? I don't think some girl's bare hands are enough to dig through concrete. The odds of a frail girl in her 20s managing to tear someone's heart out through their throat were impossibly slim already. And if that barrier Travis put up was just made of old dressers and other worn furniture, then what's stopping that thing from doing the same to me? I'm hoping that since I'm in public, I'll be safe, but I don't really like my odds. I don't think I could sleep even. if I took a normal dose of sleeping meds and feel like shit about it. My boss was understanding when I told him I'm grieving and need some time off. The perfect cover to stay indoors and away from whatever the fuck that thing is. Get my head back on track. If you don't hear from me, then stay far away from the Morrison farmhouse. I'll update if I can. I have to go to the Morrison farmhouse. One would think that anyone with problems of this caliber would call it quits at this point, but even more so than before, this has become personal. I had a night terror that I can't stop thinking about. It changed something within me. My boss cleared 3 days off from work, and I almost wished it didn't get approved. At least I would be preoccupied with my job rather than be alone at home and experiencing terrible thoughts that inexplicably manifest into hallucinations for hours on end. I felt like I was coming down from an accidental dose of a hallucinogenic cocktail with some echoing voice constantly repeating the phrase, "You took too much." Only the voice was some garbled distortion of a horrifying truth I never asked for. But I did, didn't I? I can always back out. I don't want to, though. An evil was somehow born into existence, and a family member seems to be directly involved. Or at least that's how it seems. So that's precisely why I need to end this, myself. I'm already knee-deep in shit and apparently have people following me. I tried texting Travis, but he never got back to me. Back to the dream. See, I'm not one to have a lot of dreams to begin with. Of course, I still experience them, but even when I'm under a lot of stress or some kind of life-altering event occurs, I barely ponder the subject or have any dreams about it. I just sort of go through the motions. I know saying that seems a bit odd as my cousin has just passed, but I'm fairly certain that the fear of this mystery only amplifies my desire to make practical sense of it. Adhere to logic and not go on a bender or something. The night I watched the GoPro footage is when I had that nightmare. Usually any dreams I can recollect are so short and boring that I'm only able to offer vague details. But in this case, everything was running in high definition. It begins with me somewhere that I can't quite make out at first. It was very dark, but I remember how I could smell the unmistakable musty aroma of an unkempt and damp cellar or basement. I have never heard of or have ever been able to experience using my senses in dreams before, but thinking about it now only proves my theory to be even more correct. That video I saw was real, and looking into that thing's eyes must have caused some kind of resonance to occur, I just know it. I've heard of astral projection and lucid dreaming before, but this was almost too immersive for my brain. Put the two together and add a supernatural element, and, well, I legitimately felt as if I was living through this experience. Like my soul could see through eyes outside of my body. Anyways, the layout was a little jarring to perceive, but I'm standing in front of a wooden door with some kind of farming equipment stacked in a corner next to it. I could hear a group of insects or moths behind me, an endless chittering of countless tiny wings all vibrating together. In the dream, I didn't want to turn around, or maybe my sleeping self didn't, I'm not really sure. But I turned around anyway. She was there. The vile woman, the one from the video, but also resembling Sally. Pointed teeth exposed in a sadistic grin. Her hands and feet were caked in blackened blood, nude like she was in the video. The insects chitter and buzz around her body like flies on shit. She raised her arm, a finger tipped with a dagger nail aimed at me. Terrible worms with mouths extended from her palm.
I see you,
a terrible voice in my head told me. Samuel is with me now. Come, I know you want to be with him. I remember experiencing emotions in this hellscape. Fear, anger, and desperation flowing within me like a heavy current. She then moved her arm to the bottom row of her teeth, the other prying the top open. She pulled. Her jaw unhinged, ligaments snapped, and teeth shifted to reveal my cousin's screaming head from within her. The sound he made was like nails on a chalkboard in hell. It was like watching the birth of the Antichrist. When his entire shaking and spasming body disgustingly made its way out of her mouth is when I woke up in a cold sweat. It was at that moment where I knew my cousin was suffering a fate worse than death. It took me about 6 hours to stop shaking. I couldn't eat. I couldn't think. I just paced my house, jumping at every sound I heard until I could feel somewhat normal. After the shakes stopped, I got around to microwaving some leftovers. It was a little past 5 in the evening now, and I decided to do some research. I wanted to try and get my story out there as well. That's when I started writing this. I also wanted to see if I wasn't alone in this terror. Let's get the obvious out of the way. There is some shit going on here that belongs on the show Supernatural, and I have video evidence to prove it. So I used that to my advantage. I wasn't about to sit around and let this destroy me. Any sane person should want to pour every ounce of effort into a change that will benefit their lives. Well, that's exactly what I'm doing. However, and in hindsight, I know why stupid people always die in horror movies. Because they always stick their noses in shit they should ignore. But whatever the hell that thing is, it used my dreams to attack me as some kind of sick psychological warfare. As I said, this is personal. Sure, the thing scares the fuck out of me, but the human spirit is indomitable. I went online. That's how I found this place where I'm telling you this. Sure, I've been on YouTube and Reddit before, but only when I get sent links to stuff or something. I've tried TikTok. Nothing against it, it's just not for me. I don't really get too caught up in social media, but I wanted to get in contact with someone. Anyone who knows what I should do, or if I could maybe get some help with releasing this info to the public. Shit. Maybe I'll call a priest to perform an exorcism on whatever the hell that thing is. I know we live in an age of deepfakes and AI propaganda, so I don't really think posting this on YouTube or Facebook and claiming this to be a bona fide demon or ghost is going to get me anywhere. I know for certain I'll just get called a troll and that I edited the video with software. So I went on Google and searched paranormal investigators. And to my surprise, I found a slew of links. People in different states. I found websites, contact info, and addresses. Narrowing my search list and doubts that the paranormal is something to truly fear after all, someone eventually reached out. They said they wanted to help and asked to see the video. They even offered me money. I remember feeling some relief then. Right up until I heard 4 heavy knocks on my door. I stopped typing. I was just about to send the video to someone that seemed extremely interested in this, claiming he was the best of the best in this line of work. More knocking, followed by a man's voice.
"We know you're in there. We just want to talk."
I shot up from my chair in an instant. It was as if whoever they were, they knew I was about to send that email. I looked out of my window blinds, which were open just enough for me to see a police SUV. and that same Ford that I saw at my cousin's house. I looked back down to my laptop screen. The email with the MP4 file hasn't been sent yet. I was petrified in disbelief, but something washed over me like adrenaline. I still wanted to go through with this, and seemed like I had been presented with a choice. So I chose to hit send. Immediately after I did, I hid my laptop just in case it got found and confiscated. Fuck it. I opened the door. Hello there. Is there some kind of problem, officers? I asked the bunch. There was one officer and two men in formal attire with weapons and holsters. The tallest one with a mustache took a step forward. FBI, we need to search this home for anything that may be a part of an ongoing investigation, he said, opening a wallet and showing a badge that he put away too quickly. I don't have anything illegal at all, sir. I don't even... We never said you had anything illegal, the shorter, bald agent said from behind him. I could feel my mouth open and slack as I tried to formulate sentences. I don't understand, I continued. Do you even have a warrant? The bunch didn't answer right away. Silence. Mr. Jasinski? It would be wise if you just let the two men conduct their search with no resistance, the police officer said. The two agents then placed their hands on their firearms and I felt my legs buckle. Looking back, I should have just slammed the door in their faces and barricaded my home like Fort Knox. But that would have ultimately meant I would let the media spin whatever story they wanted and actually cause more harm than good to myself. It flashed in my mind. A man not letting officers of the law do their jobs and being labeled a terrorist. I let the men in. Once they were inside, the officer stayed in the doorway. Would you like to come in? I asked. I'm fine right where I am, he said with a curtness in his tone that told me he was barricading my exit. The two men walked inside and told me to have a seat anywhere I'd like. They wanted to ask me something before they continued with the search. Have you been in contact with someone regarding the Morrison property? Mustache asked. I knew it. I knew I wasn't crazy when I saw that parked car. So you have been following me then, I said. Answer the fucking question, Mustache demanded. Fine. Yeah, I spoke with someone about it. I barely even know the guy, but my cousin is involved, and you people know something. I want to know what happened to him. Where is his body? For some reason, I was feeling a little bold. Maybe it was because I had confidence in knowing I had sent that email, and that someone would know about this. Even if something were to happen to me. What the hell is going on? I asked, pleadingly. We're the ones asking the questions, bald guy said. Why else do you think we are here right now? We know he gave something to you, Mustache continued. Now you're going to give whatever it was to us peacefully so we don't have to use force. Understand? This was ridiculous, but in the back of my mind, I knew something like this would eventually happen. I nodded, not really feeling like I had any other choice other than just to go along with whatever they're demanding. All right, I said, fully aware that no matter the outcome, they'd get what they came here for one way or another. Besides, I had already sent that MP4 file over to my new friend. I've got it right here, officers. The tiny SD card was safely in my pants pocket, and I handed it over to Mustache. He didn't react in any way and just took it from me like it wasn't anything important. I can already tell this guy was real fun at parties. Thank you for your cooperation. If you choose to pursue this anymore, then we will be forced to intervene again. I can promise that you will not like another visit from us. Are we clear? Said Mustache. A little smirk teased the corner of his mouth. I could clearly see he was pleased to utter that threat to me. I only nodded, knowing he was serious but still keeping my composure as I had a certain something they didn't know about, or at least were doing a good job at playing dumb. They all turned toward the door and made their way out of my house. "Just one thing," I interrupted. "I never caught your names or badge numbers. What if I come across a new development and need to reach out to someone?" "That won't be necessary," Bald Guy explained. "Didn't you just hear my partner here? You will not like another meeting with us," he finished. The Three Stooges finally made their exit, and I confidently waited for their vehicles to depart from my sight. Moments later, I poured a celebratory helping of aged wine as I exported the video file my hidden camera captured of the conversation I had with the agents onto my cloud storage. I'll be using this as leverage once I uncover more about this mystery. After finishing a glass, I decided to check my email and see if my new friend responded. They did, informing me they would like to meet up, and I immediately agreed. They said that if I were to receive any more info from them, then I would have to make an entirely new email with false information, destroy whatever device I was viewing it on. I agreed to do so. I cautiously went to Walmart and bought some cheap Android, then created a dummy email account under fake information. For obvious reasons, let's just call him Andy Johnson, or AJ henceforth instead of his real name. He told me that communication with him now is untraceable anyway, but to open an incognito tab and read the next email as well as reply on it. AJ's reaction after I had informed him about the agent's visit to my home was not at all what I expected. I'll copy and paste the abridged reply here. "The Morrison farmhouse has been a point of fascination to my organization for some time now. So again, I thank you for this nudge on the shoulder, if you will. You'd be surprised at how many people are involved in the supernatural, and quite honestly, a lot more than you could probably imagine. You may have come across a cult or some branch of government that specializes in cover-ups. I know the like. I'm actually a little shocked they didn't kill you and then made it seem like a suicide because of your cousin's death. Ring any bells? They can spin whatever they want and the media will eat it up. People in power can do a great number of things in this world. With that in mind, I urge you to buy another burner phone if you want to communicate moving forward. Better safe than sorry. However, you don't need to involve yourself any further if you don't want to. Like I said, I will pay you for your troubles if it means you walk away from this and leave it in mine and my team's hands. I'm terribly sorry for your loss, but if it means helping you get more closure, then I'll do what I can. So, if you're up for it, then go to this address and I will involve you in my operations to intercept. You would just need to comply with my security. We have access to a building for our operations near you. You have 12 hours to arrive starting at 4 p.m. EST. Information removed. Go to the facility door with the no smoking sign right above the broken intercom and call me at information removed. When you arrive, I will answer and a representative will allow entry. I want to warn you before you make a decision. The facility I will be allowing you to enter will contain some things you may not be prepared to witness. It will all certainly cause more psychological distress than you have already endured. Please keep this in mind as you make your decision. We are a unique organization after all. Another thing to keep in mind is that my security team will have free rein to assess whether or not you may be a threat to security. Meaning that if you were to seem privy on sharing the location of this facility, then you will be heavily monitored by them until they deem you fit for trust. If there's any more concern, you will be removed from the premise. We do not intend to cause you harm or any more stress in your life. But you have to understand the importance of secrecy that my organization must adhere to. I am already taking a big risk by inviting you here. The FBI or whoever you met will likely have their eyes on you, but they don't have eyes on or access to everything. I trust that you will be careful with your method of travel anyway. For your safety, please delete this email and destroy this device. All the best. Andy Johnson, owner and founder of Global Investigation Services. So, yeah, holy shit, right? Needless to say, the email was deleted as soon as I was done reading it. I had no idea the underground world would be this vast, and after the past few days while acknowledging the hell my day-to-day existence has become, this was the most reassuring thing in my world right now. I decided that I wanted to take this more seriously. I got that other burner phone and left my actual cell phone at home. I informed AJ what I was doing. He was thrilled about my enthusiasm, and I made the 1.5-hour trip through a series of Lyft drivers to throw off my pursuers. It seemed to work because I made it to the address with no issues. I felt confident enough to call the number provided as soon as I was within arm's reach of the industrial door he had described in the email. The rusted "no smoking" sign next to the door looked ancient, and it conjured a memory I had seeing one similar in the early 90s. Maybe I was here before. While that thought creeped in, so did doubt. This guy seems professional or whatever, but what if I'm walking right into a trap? What does he even have to gain from fucking with me anyway? I looked up towards the "no smoking" sign again and noticed the surveillance camera pointed at me. It was too late to chicken out now, because the voice on the other end of the line spoke.
Knock on the door 3 times.
With slight hesitation, I went ahead and did as the voice said. The woman hung up and the door seemed to open on its own, displaying a darkened path before me. I stepped into the building and immediately felt hands on my shoulders with the sensation of cloth being forced over my head. "Protocol? Sorry. Please keep moving. We will guide you to AJ." A woman's voice pierced the darkness. I muttered a breathless okay through the sudden panic, and quickly relaxed as someone's hand on my shoulder gently guided me through the series of twists and turns. We eventually made our way to an elevator as the obvious sounds and the sensation of being in one filled my blackened world. My body then began sending signals of descent. Now I was entering the depths of some old and forgotten building in rural suburbia, and that made me wonder. Was I really doing the right thing? Or did I just play into the hands of some trap orchestrated by the people I'm working against? Ice-cold dread filled my veins and made a nest in my guts. Once the elevator reached what I can only assume to be the bottom floor, the doors opened and we all stepped out. The first thing my mind obviously registered through the sack over my head was what I could hear in the space around me. Other than the sounds of our footsteps on concrete, there was feedback from some amp or monitor somewhere, and that sensation you'll feel hearing depth in a large empty space. Aside from that, I could hear people murmuring, typing on keyboards, and the overall ambience you'd get in a major office or government building. Eventually, the sack was removed. I'll keep this as brief as I can because I was perplexed and there was already more words being said about all of this as my experiences lengthen. But there was a lot happening in this room. Have you ever seen the film The Cabin in the Woods? If not, there's spoilers ahead. Underneath the cabin lies a facility managed by some organization. They monitor the people that stay at the cabin, using it to control environmental factors, also containing a variety of monsters and holding cells. They use them to terrify the cabin inhabitants by releasing them. The organization is actually the bad guy in the story because they lure victims to the cabin and sacrifice them to some ancient god. They do so by using all of the terrible things at their disposal. Great movie. This place was no different. It had huge screens, people glued to smaller screens with headsets and everything I mentioned about the movie, including the monsters. There was a row of glass chambers mounted and built to a large metal wall. The construction had to have taken centuries or something because the enclosures looked as if they could survive 100 nuclear holocausts. There were only 2 of them held captive in the space, with scientists holding clipboards nearby, but were certainly hideous and terrifying. One was this muscular bipedal hybrid of a wolf bred with some winged creature strapped down and lying on an oversized medical procedure table. Its jaw was unhinged in a way that exposed its chasm of a throat, lined with rows of needle-like teeth. It was docile at the moment, likely due to whatever was being pumped into its veins, but I had no doubt in my mind that this thing could tear me to shreds with ease. The other was more depressing to look at. A large baby of some kind. I'm glad I couldn't hear the cries because the river of blood that flowed down its purple, bulged and gelatinous-looking cheeks made me think the sound alone would cause me to collapse in anguish or fear. I do not wish to describe it any further. The others who led me here walked ahead of me while I looked in stunned horror. Now I understood what AJ meant in his last email, but even if I were to tell anyone, nobody on Earth would believe me. Well, maybe. The point is, if I were to bring this information to the authorities, I would no doubt be looking at a nice grippy sock vacation for a month or 2. Sir, if you would follow me, please, I can lead you to AJ. The woman called out while I was in a trance. I shuffled over to her in the group, then we eventually made our way to an office. Inside was a man seated at a large desk, with 2 men in lab coats on either side and another for security. The 2 were busy with devices of some kind, while the other was just staring at me. The man that was in the chair was turned toward a window that displayed what looked like a darkened aquarium, though the tank seemed to be empty. "I'm glad you can make it, Mr. Jasinski," said the man from behind his large black office chair. He turned to face me then. I was greeted by a rather handsome individual wearing a beaming smile. I nervously walked toward his desk as he extended his hand for a greeting. "It's a pleasure to make your acquaintance. Welcome to OKG-091, one of my most favored facilities." I shook his hand as respectfully as possible while introducing myself. He retracted his hand and spoke. "I do hope my home away from home isn't too frightening for you. At GIS, we have to often become intimate with some rather interesting areas of study," he said. I did not like the wording he chose as well as the tone which supported my disgust for his enthusiasm. As he said this, and as if on cue, movement caught my eye from within the aquarium. I couldn't believe my eyes, but what passed by was what I could only guess to be a siren. My skin crawled as I involuntarily flinched when the skull attached to the naked torso of a woman swam by. A tail complete with shimmering scales, flashing like dying stars in the abysmal aquarium. It was then I noticed the contents of his office. The best way to describe it would be Dr. Frankenstein's personal suite. While I do understand the fascination of the occult, professionalism takes higher precedence when handling things of this nature, he continued. "Yeah, I get it, I think," I stuttered out. "Forgive my yapping. I am AJ. Welcome. We have some things to discuss, don't we?" We got right to business as I tried not to be entirely unsettled by his pearly white grin and the horrors around me. We had a brief discussion about how I was feeling. I was honest and informed him of mine and my cousin's childhood and how I viewed him more as a brother than anything. He sympathized, and I could tell he was sincere because he shared a story with me. one that made the hairs on my neck stand on end but left me feeling a cold emptiness. He told me that he came from a small village but didn't know the exact location. He was eventually smuggled out of there when he was a child, and then escaped from an island he was apparently going to stay at indefinitely. He said he and his family were the victims of a sinister cult, one that experimented on the deceased and captured children from neighboring villages, even mentioning operatives under a certain company's payroll that would travel farther and did work for bodies of government involved with human trafficking. His little brother suffered a terrible fate. The village cult leader decided it was his little brother's turn to become part of a horrific experiment where the soul of a body is transferred to an object. The lifeless husk would then be used for science like drug or product testing, and other more cruel topics of study I can't bring myself to type out. He said there was a night where his little brother had somehow escaped from whatever cell they had him in. AJ explained that he compared his brother's behavior to a sense of familiarity like an animal instinct to return to the herd. He managed to enter the shacks the inhabitants were kept in. It was well after the sun had set, and the brother silently made his way to where his family had been sleeping. AJ said he awoke suddenly by a series of gasps. And there stood the armless, empty shell that was his beloved sibling. Head shaved and eyes as white as snow. Stitch marks lining the ridge of where his skull was obviously opened. The cultists then made their entrance and quickly stole the boy away again to hide whatever they had done to the child. However, there seemed to be something going on from within the cult's compound. Some sort of struggle was occurring. He told me wails of agony and terror became a cacophony of despair within the compound, as people were seen fleeing in all directions. A short time later, the insurrection of slaves ensued. It was a bloodbath, and the victims decided that enough was enough. All AJ remembered, after realizing something was wrong, was the sound of gunfire and blood-curdling screams from a throat that didn't sound human, coming from the direction of the main building, as he hid in a large garbage can. AJ didn't go into any more detail on what else happened after that or how he made it to the United States. When I asked to explain more, he just remained calm with an expression that told me he would tear my tongue out. So I didn't pry any further. That beaming smile returned, and I shuddered slightly. It was here I then noticed more grizzled features AJ had. His arms also looked a bit more defined from under his well-tailored casual suit. I think it's safe to say that this guy has seen some shit. We then got to the topic at hand. To put it simply, he wanted me to bait the entity that's inside of the Morrison farmhouse. In return, his team would intercept it by capturing it somehow to see if there was anything they could do for my cousin's passing. His soul is undoubtedly trapped in some hellish realm within this being's domain, he claimed. He was a good man, yes? We can give him a push in the right direction, so to speak. At first I protested with fear and confusion in my voice, bewildered at the prospect that Sam's soul was somehow able to be sent somewhere like heaven. But he did his best to reassure me that all would go smoothly if I listened to his team's instructions during the process. It has something you want, and you are something it wants, he concluded. I had to agree with his assessment. It was essentially the only thing that made sense to me at the time. Did it sound like a bad idea? Fuck yeah. But I couldn't possibly figure out another solution to get what we both wanted. Call it revenge or whatever, but I wanted to see this thing suffer for what it did to my cousin. To Stacy as well, even Travis. Obviously, all this guy wanted was the thing itself. With his aquarium and underground facility in mind, I was certain he viewed it as an opportunity to collect another trophy. The smile he wore as he finished explaining was telling enough. What about those people that claim they were FBI? Aren't they going to, make things difficult? I asked. The smile never faded as the siren behind him made another appearance. Don't you worry about them, he said. Another thing you don't need to worry about is telling this story to people. Let the internet have a ball, because as far as I'm concerned, you and many others will never fully understand the way universal laws can be ignored. The same could be said about your government's laws as well. For all you know, you could have been drugged by my security team, and you've been speaking to a revolutionary AI hologram. The smile disappeared, replaced by a stern expression. History can be rewritten and replaced by just a few people at the signing on a dotted line. The worst part is you'll be so manipulated by then, you won't even notice. You'll be too preoccupied with tiring work hours and the lack of sleep. Maybe that's why you've gotten colds more frequently and your back has been hurting more. Better make that doctor's appointment after all, huh? He finished. How did he know all of that? The implications my mind was forced to contemplate caused a feeling of dread like no other. Whether he was trying to scare me or manipulate me wasn't the only thing that bothered me. It was the confidence in his tone. It displayed his comfort and pride in what he does for a living. At the time, I didn't know what kind of power he had over me. But I did know one thing. I was deeply uncomfortable with just being in his presence. I felt that I was rendered useless. Like this man had my life in the palm of his hand and could make me disappear without a trace. After all, I was hundreds of feet below the surface of the everyday grind that my mind has already been acclimated to. This was his world, and I was the equivalent to a speck of dust he would walk on and make someone else clean it up. As I said before, I've watched enough TV shows to understand that fact isn't too far from fiction. With that in mind, I agreed to his idea of using me as bait to draw out the entity. We made the plan for me and his team to enter the Morrison farmhouse tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. I was then escorted to a hotel where a room was already booked for me. I was able to get my cell phone from home first. For such a scary guy that was ultimately alright with the idea of me dying for his personal interests, he was considerate enough to book me at a 5-star hotel with room service and a jacuzzi in the room itself. He even gave me $5,000 in cash. Later that evening, I had a bottle of Bombay Sapphire and an assortment of other goods delivered to my room. I opened Tinder and invited someone over for the night, and I promptly enjoyed myself. It was the first time in a long time where I could actually enjoy myself. I'm not entirely sure why, but I desperately needed it. It was all at the expense of some horrible occurrence, but I'll take what I can get to decompress right now. I can handle being up before 8 with a little hangover. I didn't even want to get fucked up, I just wanted to forget. I get up for work at 4:30 a.m. every day no matter what happens the night prior, so ghost hunting should be a breeze. My Tinder date and I finally threw in the towel a little after 1 in the morning and we passed out with the TV on. I eventually woke up to pee in the middle of the night, and after I finished up, I hovered back to bed, then noticed my cell phone lying on the bed directly under her exposed breasts. I gently shifted their weight to slide my phone out from under her and checked to see what time it was. 6:36 a.m. Normally, I would just go back to bed, but there was a problem. Travis texted me at 2:36 in the morning, then called me shortly after. I was asleep and had my phone on vibrate. I tried calling him back, but he didn't answer. I informed AJ via text that I was on my way to the Morrison farmhouse without them, and that the situation calls for a last-minute and immediate Plan B option. This was the text I had received from Travis.
Turns out Stacy was a liar. I expected better from your cousin, though. No more tucking tail. I'm ending this tonight.
He also sent me a picture of a gas can. Through the panic, I got my clothes on and gathered my belongings as quickly as I could. What the hell did he mean by that first part? The gas can was obvious enough, but something must have happened between Stacy and my cousin to drive him to arson. I guess my cousin really had a lot of us fooled after all. I drove well past the speed limit to get to the Morrison farmhouse. AJ called me and I picked up while driving on the freeway.
What the hell do you think you're doing heading there without me?
He commanded. At least I'm letting you know what the fuck's going on. Look, this is a personal matter to me and not some trophy hunt. I won't do anything stupid.
You already are doing something stupid. Think about how much time has passed. Fuck. For all we know, first responders have been there, and there is no farmhouse left to speak of.
Sweat formed on my temples after hearing that.
I wanted to get a better game plan before any action. Damn it all!
He was pissed, but the situation called for immediate action. I wasn't going to just sit around and wait for something worse to happen. He growled into the phone.
Just go. I'll meet you there. But whatever you do, don't go in that cellar before we arrive.
I had to take the chance. Logic and reason were already discarded the moment I started the vehicle. Shit. My whole life was already flipped upside down by my own volition, so this all just came natural to me. I also wanted to know what Travis meant in his text. As I got off on the exit that led me to the farmhouse, I started to calm down and decided on driving a little more responsibly. I guess Travis didn't go through with it. There weren't any fire trucks or any rising smoke at all. Or maybe he had gotten caught. It's a good thing the driveway to the place is one of those long and winding dirt paths, because I was able to see the vehicles before I even got to the front lawn. The dynamic duo were not at the farmhouse before I got there. I didn't see their Ford, but I saw Travis's matte black antique right away. It was parked off the side of the driveway and dominating the mailbox. Seems Travis was hell-bent on burning the place down, but something must have happened. There was, however, a convoy of officers at the farmhouse, because the entire road leading up was littered with cop cars. I had to be extremely careful. The property's driveway is located on one of those old roads directly on the side of an interstate highway built past the embankment. I decided to park my car on the shoulder of the highway to give it the appearance that I broke down. There was a pretty large pocket knife I kept in the center console for emergencies, and I took it out for the occasion. I took a deep breath and crossed the embankment towards the no trespassing signs. Not the safest thing in the world and extremely illegal, but I needed to get to that driveway quickly before any passerby got suspicious. A thick forest blanketed the area until a section to the east opened up to display the driveway. I got myself past the first wave of foliage, then cautiously made my way towards the farmhouse, avoiding fallen branches and leaves that could potentially give my position away. A few minutes went by and I eventually heard the sound of voices and police radio chatter. Soon enough, the property was in view, and a clear image painted itself. I counted 3 vehicles and 7 officers. Obviously, they hadn't made their way inside yet. My adrenaline was keeping me on my toes and alert, so much so that the idea of getting in trouble with law enforcement did nothing to deter my plan of entering that house. I don't exactly know what I'm going to do once I'm in there, but I've always been an act now, think later type of guy, and it's never steered me wrong before. I don't exactly know how anyone wasn't able to spot me. I was probably on one of their dash cams, but I slipped and fell before I got to one of the back doors to see if it was open. When I found out it was locked, I had to sneak past 2 officers that were near another entry point. I remembered the footage Travis gave me and went to the window they went through on the wraparound porch. I noticed it was slightly ajar, and I could see that a set of wooden planks were once put up. One was still on the top and another hanging by a loose nail. I slid the glass up and squeezed through to the inside of the Morrison farmhouse with relative ease. The air was beyond stagnant. It felt wrong in every sense of the word. I also immediately smelled gasoline as well, but more so felt as if I had placed myself in a spider's web and I was a fly. I quickly got my shit together and again remembered the GoPro footage. Making my way past a horde, then to the kitchen, I found Travis's discarded gas can. Where the hell was he? Probably the cellar already. But why weren't the police inside the building? I wonder. Once I got near the exposed cellar door, I could hear these horrible, wet sounds emanating from below. I was on the verge of pissing myself, but at this point I could hear another sound. There was a groan of pain that repeated in long drawls. The tone was familiar. It had to be Travis. The goal was clear now. I had to try and save him if I could, and at the very least, finish the job of his arsonist escapade. But then the reality settled in. I was in the lion's den. That Sally thing was no doubt somewhere lurking within the depths of the farmhouse. Good thing I brought a pocket knife, I guess. I'm not sure what it would do to a supernatural monster, but it still kept me at relative ease, knowing I could defend myself. As my foot planted on the last step of the creaky wood staircase, my descent was met with more sounds that caused a fight or flight reaction. Flies and these massive bugs were flying everywhere, but they never seemed to notice me. They were doing something to the walls, puking or something, and rubbing some gore-like substance with their chittering limbs and bodies. Those awful squelching sounds were ever present as I tried not to become overwhelmed by panic and fear. I was in its nest, no doubt. Enough light was offered with the basement windows. I could see the hole. Then I saw him. I wasn't prepared to see this abomination before me. Travis was embedded into this wall of exposed flesh. Strange appendages held him in place as he slowly writhed. His face was essentially melted on one side, almost giving the appearance of Two-Face from Batman. I was absolutely horrified. I almost threw up from the sight alone, not counting those nightmarish flesh sounds. Before I could even think of the fact that I didn't even have matches or a lighter to turn this hellscape to ash, I could hear something emerge from the hole behind me. I couldn't react quick enough because I felt an impact on the back of my head and my world went black. I had a strange vision. It provided me with closure and brand new nightmares. Somehow I could see in my mind's eye that Sally had done something otherworldly in this godforsaken cellar. I was somehow aware but completely separate from my body. It almost looked as if I was seeing a video through a security camera feed. My vision cast downward like the camera was placed in a corner near the ceiling. I could see the Morrison house basement before the flesh walls took over. There were 3 people standing around what was once that huge hole in the ground. White chalked symbols drawn in a perfect circle. A corpse lay in the center. It was an older man. He was in a suit that only the recently buried would wear. He was dug up from a grave. Thinking back, I had to wonder if the corpse was actually Sally's father. The people weren't some cult wearing robes and attire that you would see in a horror movie or anything like that. They just looked like regular people. One was what looked like a male grad student that just got hired into an IT firm. One was another woman with piercings all over and a necklace adorned with bone and other oddities. Another man that looked to be their security was there as well because he was wearing a vest and holstered a pistol. Something about him was familiar, but he was mainly cast in shadow. Then, Sally was there, holding a cup filled with a mysterious liquid. Another was on some altar near her, and located by that butcher area standing nearest to the corpse. After some chanting, Sally then crouched down to the corpse and poured one of the cups of gray matter into its mouth. She then stood and drank the other. Her head tilted to the side, as if she were pondering the taste. "You feeling all right?" the IT guy asked. Sally didn't answer. Instead, she doubled over and immediately vomited. She was shaking violently as she expelled her insides. A long string of gore was pouring out of her mouth endlessly. I could hear her gargled and choked screams in my soul within this dream realm. After the 3 other people began backing up, Sally's intestines were fully discarded next to the corpse. She stood still for a moment, staring blankly at nothing. Her entire torso had become flattened, looking like she suffered from severe anorexia. She then fell over into a lifeless heap. The security guy ran then, but the other 2 remained transfixed. Before the 2 made a sound, the pile of guts writhed in a strange fashion, as if they had been given life. Then, the pile slowly squirmed toward the corpse in the middle of the ritual circle. To my utter bewilderment, the organs somehow made their way into the mouth of the body in seemingly every available orifice. It began to shake violently, spasming uncontrollably as the 2 stared in horror. I could hear bones crack. No. Rather set into place as if the organs merged within the lifeless body and aiding it in a rapid and sickening healing process. Because the once pale, dead, and hemorrhaged skin began forming color of life, giving off the appearance of a discolored porcelain reshaping into wax. The floor within the circle and under the corpse began to crumble. But then I saw the 2 people start reacting to the transformation in a way I wasn't ready for. The 2 began pulling at their throats, as if they were desperately trying to catch their breath. The sounds that came from them was a wailing of suffrage, an epoch of torment. Disembodied and raw. As they pulled, their skin sagged. It looked as if blood was being rapidly drained from their bodies, like some kind of sickening exsanguination. Their eyes became black, mouths open and slack. Teeth fell out. Then hair. They regressed into themselves, limbs and fingers curling in, their clothes sagging like grocery bags. They collapsed to the floor, looking like fallen tree branches. My attention then met the now fully revived and standing corpse. Somehow, at its feet, the entire circle was now a crater. It was as if the thing somehow stole their essence and some strange supernatural energy was involved. What I saw was obviously humanoid, but there was no genitalia or even eyes or ears. Just a standing body with an open mouth. Its head snapped towards Sally's body, and it immediately hunched down to her. The mouth opened so wide I thought it would tear apart, but it began to consume Sally, swallowing her whole like a serpent. I was sucked out of the trance then. I slowly gained consciousness and felt my arms and legs move with the help of something or someone. Regaining my senses, I could hear noises of conflict and crashes. I then saw AJ hovering over me. He was in some kind of tactical gear, and there was a sword holstered on his hip like a samurai. He pulled me out of this cocoon of some kind. I could feel tiny hairs or sticky matter removed from my skin like peeling a band-aid as I was pulled free from the primordial glue. I made contact with the ground and stared up at AJ's stern face. "You fucking moron." He then took out a syringe and plunged it into my neck. I felt a sudden surge of adrenaline and immediately wanted to stand up. It was an autonomous reaction. I needed to move. As soon as I was on my feet, I saw these pale figures fighting with the Sally monster. They were also in tactical gear and moved gracefully as they slowly tried to chip away at the she-beast. They looked like puppets being controlled like a haunting marionette. "They will tire her for me," said AJ. "Once those two are dead, I'll be taking over, but I'll need your help, Mr. Jasinski." He then removed a pistol from his holster and gave it to me. "I trust you are familiar with firearms?" he asked. "Yeah." I heard flesh tearing to my right. The battle in the cellar was over between AJ's undead soldiers and Sally. The two lay discarded at her feet. AJ then laughed. "My turn." He then took out a vial filled with red liquid. "Demon's blood," he said in a ravenous tone. He drank the shot down and took a deep breath as Sally contorted her body at attention, in a predatorial stance aimed at us. "I hate the after effects, but my wife and the others will be here soon," he explained before getting into a battle stance and unsheathed his sword. It was a blackened katana, and his exposed skin pulsed with veins that matched his weapon. "Cover me," he commanded. I aimed the pistol at Sally. The two then battled in such a brutal manner. I could barely get any shots in, but I provided enough defense for AJ because I could see him getting the upper hand quickly. Before I knew it, he had her on the ground and stuck her with the blade in her chest, then pinned her to the ground in a grotesque manner, twisting the blade as he dominated her. One combat boot on her neck. Sally's limbs slumped. AJ then did something I would never expect. He got down on the ground and bit into her neck, then tore a chunk of flesh out of her. "You taste like shit," he sneered in a tone that I don't remember him having. The blackened blood sprayed onto the nearby wall, painting an image of violence and chaos. And then, it was over. Ultimately, AJ got what he wanted, because within minutes of the battle being over, Mustache and Baldy arrived with the military. They hauled Sally away in this massive container that was airlifted to somewhere I would never know about, but AJ was very vocal about. AJ then collapsed after a while, and a woman was there to aid him. I was told it was his wife. She got him onto a stretcher and began providing medical support, giving him these strange tinctures and rubbing his demon-like flesh with something I couldn't understand. I was then taken to what turned out to be an FBI building, and kept there while I was tested for a number of things. particularly running tests to see if I was affected by whatever that biomass was. They said I carried traces of it within me, but were confident they had it under control if I was monitored, and came to this facility an hour away to be treated for the symptoms every month. When I asked about the symptoms, they were vague about the details. The woman said I would experience discomfort, and left it at that. I then got another interview while being stared down by several intimidating-looking men wearing shiny badges, mustache and baldy present. They said I could go back home if I was feeling alright, as the medical staff informed me that whatever was inside of me was not contagious, for now at least, and that I would be heavily monitored by FBI moving forward. There was some information I received about Stacy and my cousin. Apparently, those two were sneaking around behind Travis's back. The texts lifted from their phones, courtesy of the FBI, were telling enough of more than just nightly visits or dates. Now I understood why Travis did what he did. How he found out personally is beyond me, but maybe he heard it from a friend. I was just so shocked that my cousin, who I had previously thought to be of timid nature, would do something like this behind a friend's back. This caused a sort of emptiness to occur within me, like my whole life was a lie sort of feeling, almost like betrayal. While we're on the subject, Travis didn't make it. He was seemingly consumed by the flesh wall, and there was nothing they could do for him. That poor bastard. So finally, after everything I have endured, I looked at the agents and asked the million-dollar question. You guys were the ones behind covering up his death, weren't you? They were all silent, and slid a packet of papers toward me. Before I was released, I was forced to sign the NDA, which I am happily breaking right now, because I don't think I will be among the living soon. I can feel whatever that flesh was slowly destroying my insides, like a parasite that won't get out, consuming endlessly. I started noticing that it was getting worse when I was coughing up blood and teeth. I was given these pills to take, but they aren't working at all. My limbs are sagging. My breaths are shallow and hoarse. I can barely write anymore. But I want my story out there for the public to read. Thinking about what's inside of me is such a strange feeling. It's like a separate consciousness within me, and I don't know why I had the dream I had the other night of the thing talking to me. Maybe it has something to do with that. Maybe it was my cousin somehow trying to reach out through those strange fiber-like growths or something like that. Maybe it was that Sally thing. Maybe it was something my mind conjured up. Whatever the explanation may be, I hope you never have to experience something like this in your lifetime. If your town has some urban legend involving something you feel should be left alone, then listen to your gut. Because what could be lying in wait there may be why you end up on the news. Or worse.